Welcome into the College Football Recruiting Show. I'm Grace Remington filling in for Emily Proud and also joined by Blair Angulo. Remember to send in your questions in the live chat. We'll be answering them at the end of the show. But let's get started with the biggest headlines of the day. Five-star cornerback Cormani McClain, the highest-ranked unsigned player in the 2023 class, will announce his college destination this Sunday. McClain has been committed to Miami since October, but did not sign with the Hurricanes on National Signing Day in December. Blair, how many more twists and turns in this recruitment can we expect?
Well, Grace, everyone will be on the edge of their seats on Sunday to find out what's happening with Cormani McClain. He already shocked the recruiting world twice in the last couple months, so stay tuned because this is recruiting and anything can happen.
Anything can happen. All right, Texas landed its 2024 quarterback with in-state three-star Trey Owens' commitment on Wednesday. He credits his relationship with head coach Steve Sarkisian and quarterback coach A.J. Milwee as one of the reasons he chose Texas. Blair, with Arch Manning arriving a year before him, what is Owens' potential in Austin?
It's a great situation for Trey Owens. There's very little pressure to be the star right away. He can learn under Sarkisian. He can learn under Milwee, pick up on things from Arch Manning and other quarterbacks in that room. So the potential for him to contribute down the road is significant without much urgency to see an immediate impact.
Positions in the 2024 class are making their commitments live on the 247 Sports YouTube channel tomorrow. Four-star Christian Betancourt, the number 4 tight end in the nation, will announce at 1:30 Eastern. The number 3 safety in the class, four-star Jalen Hayward, will decide at 2:30. Blair, for the programs who land these two top 247 players, what kind of athletes are they getting?
With Christian Betancourt, one lucky team will be getting a projectable tight end with very good size and an impressive high point ability. And with Jalen Hayward, whoever lands the commitment gets a versatile defensive back who can match up out wide, he match up in the slot, but he projects best long-term as a rover safety.
All right, and stay tuned because we'll be talking more about Betancourt and Hayward later in the show with Steve Wiltfong. Jaden Rashada, Florida's 2023 five-star quarterback signee, is still signed with the Gators and has not requested a release from the university. This, according to his father, who spoke with national recruiting analyst Brandon Huffman. Rashada is the number 6 quarterback in the 2023 class. He originally committed to Miami in the summer, then flipped to the Gators in November. He is not yet enrolled at the school. Now, for the latest on Rashada's recruitment, let's bring in Brandon Huffman. And Brandon, you've been speaking with Rashada's father. How did Florida and Jaden get into this situation?
Well, that's a great question, and one that I don't think that we're ever going to get the real answer to. But all we know is that a week ago, after he played in the Under Armour game in Orlando, he was supposed to head back to the West Coast, grab his stuff, and then head back to Florida. He is not in the Sunshine State. He is back in the Bay Area. And it sounds like there's still some layers here to this situation that need to get resolved if Jaden Rashada is going to eventually end up in Gainesville.
Huff, the spring semester at Florida began on Monday earlier this week. When does this situation need to be resolved by?
I think realistically it needs to be resolved by Friday at the latest, that he could start his classes on Monday in Gainesville. Now, one of the things with University of Florida is they started their classes on Monday, like you said. The last day for add and drop is this Friday, which is on tomorrow. So this needs to be resolved ASAP in order for him to enroll in time for this semester to be able to play during spring football. So that's why I think you're going to see some kind of resolution one way or the other over the next 24 hours, and we'll eventually know if Jaden Rashada ends up at Florida or if he's going to end up going through the recruiting process one more time.
Now, we know in modern day recruiting, there's just so many factors that can influence a recruit's decision. How much did NIL deals play a part in this?
Well, I think if you read all the reports, the NIL keeps popping up in it. And I'm sure that there are layers to it that NIL does have a factor in this and does have a presence in there. But that's one of those things where, nobody really truly knows. We don't know what goes on in the NIL. We see outlandish numbers being thrown out for every recruit. NIL has captivated the recruiting process and every layer of it. So I'm sure that NIL absolutely is factoring into this, but how much of that is, that's the question that we don't know. We know that there are reports that came up this summer when he initially committed to Miami. We know there are reports when he flipped to Florida that NIL was a big factor. So I'm imagining that NIL does have something to do with this, but to what level, to what layer, that is the great question. I think only the people that are really a part of this process are privy to know.
Yeah, like Grace mentioned, a lot of different factors when you think about recruitments. A lot of recruitments come down to relationships, Huff. What is the relationship like right now between Florida and Jaden Rashada?
Well, that's what Thursday was going to be big about. There was going to be a conversation that took place, according to Harlan Rashada, with the University of Florida and with the Rashada family. And now it's going to be, is this relationship repairable? Is it not? Is it irreparable? That is going to, again, be established in that conversation on Thursday. Is it too little, too late? Is it something that's salvageable? Again, that's why that call is going to be so key. And that's why I think we will have some kind of resolution by Friday, one way or the other. But when people that are involved in this start leaking information and sources are indicating, and then stories start getting built, and then people have to go on the record to address that tells me that there might be some a little bit of a gap that's being created in the relationship. And so that's why that conversation on Thursday is so important, not just to the University of Florida, not just to Rashada, but maybe some of those other schools that are keeping an eye on, seeing how they may be affected by this.
Well, Rashada's recruitment has been anything but a straight line. He decommitted from Miami. Now his status with Florida is uncertain. So what's next for the QB?
That is a great question. And again, I think that by the end of the week on Friday, we will know what the next step is. It's either go move your stuff, get down to Gainesville, get into class, get acclimated with your new program, or it may be back to the drawing board, back to square one. Being that he signed a national letter of intent in December, he would need, if this relationship is irreparable, he would need to get released from his NLI. If he doesn't get out of his NLI, then maybe he has to use a transfer already. We've seen it's not uncommon, even in the era of the one-year transfer. A year ago, Jeremy Bernard was committed and signed to the University of Washington, be committed for almost 2 years. He was scheduled to start classes on January 2nd. Well, on January 3rd. On January 2nd, Junior Adams announced that he was leaving Washington to go to Oregon because Jeremy never enrolled at Washington. He was let out of his NLI by the University of Washington, went to Michigan State, and then ultimately went into the portal and transferred. If Jaden is not released from his NLI, he has to play at the University of Florida, then he perhaps would have to use a transfer, the one-time transfer right now. So that's what the next step is going to be. If this thing does not get resolved, does he end up asking out of his NLI, which would be the next step for him to end up in a new place? Does he wait until the summer to end up somewhere? Does he go somewhere that maybe is on the quarter system where he could start in March or April? Does he go to another school that's on the semester system and miss a week and a half? There's, again, so many layers, and it's all dependent on how that conversation on Thursday goes.
Yeah, Huff, let's take a step back and look at this from a holistic standpoint. And considering this situation with Florida and Jaden Rashada, and given that we had already crossed the finish line, per se, when he put pen to paper, what does the future of NIL look like in recruiting?
Well, one thing is for sure, it's going to continue to have a presence in recruiting, and it's going to have a kind of take on a life of its own. I mean, you go back to when the first kind of word came out back in the spring about the first quarterback who was tied to a big money NIL deal, and how everything kind of just evolved and erupted, coming off the heels of a 2022 cycle where it was the first year where NIL was a factor. But now you're seeing quarterbacks getting more involved, where quarterbacks that committed earlier in the process to kind of be the Pied Piper, if you will, for recruiting class, now they're holding out a little bit longer, and NIL is definitely having an impact on quarterback recruiting at all positions. So, eventually we're going to come to a point where the NCAA is going to try to do whatever they can to get the toothpaste back in the tube. But I think at this point, there's toothpaste all over the sink everywhere, and it's impossible to clean this mess up. And there really is not going to be any resolution or change to it if it doesn't get nipped in the bud this quickly. So it's clear that NIL is becoming at the forefront. You're hearing every college coach in the country either say, hey, yeah, you're absolutely right, we used NIL to assign this class, or other schools say, no, we're doing it this way, or other schools using it to address their own boosters but making it look like they're blaming somebody else as a call to arms. However, coaches are using NIL in their recruiting process. It's not going anywhere, guys, and I think it's only going to continue to become more prominent unless the NCAA, and save the chuckles and the LOLs, but unless the NCAA can figure out a way to stop it, I don't see it slowing down anytime.
A messy situation, and one that we will be watching closely. Thanks for joining us, Huff. Appreciate you. And for the latest updates on Rashada's recruitment, stay tuned to swamp247.com. Earlier today, five-star quarterback Jackson Arnold received a special surprise from a Cowboys legend. Jason Witten was the first to break the news to the Oklahoma signee that he is Gatorade National Player of the Year. Blair caught up with them earlier. Here's that conversation.
We are now joined by two very special guests, Jackson Arnold, Oklahoma Sooners signee, five-star quarterback, and the newest recipient of the Gatorade National Player of the Year. And sitting to his left is Jason Witten, 11-time NFL Pro Bowler and the 2012 NFL Walton Payton Man of the Year Award winner. And Jackson, first of all, congratulations on being named the Gatorade National Player of the Year. What does this award mean to you?
It means a lot. As Gatorade was saying, it's the most prestigious award a high schooler can get. And just seeing myself alongside the names of people on the plaque, it's pretty special.
That acclaimed list includes the likes of Emmitt Smith, Peyton Manning, Kyler Murray, most recently Nicholas Singleton, who's just coming off a great freshman season at Penn State. To have your name next to some of those names, what does that entail about what you've been able to accomplish at the high school level?
It tells a lot. Just seeing the grind and the hard work I've put in throughout all these years, just to see it finally come to fruition and be alongside those names, it's really special.
And Jason, you coach at Liberty Christian School there near Denton Guyer. What has made Jackson Arnold such a special player in high school?
Well, I mean, I think that just, not just here in Dallas, but across the country, there's so much respect for Jackson, what he's been able to accomplish. And I think more than anything, it's about who the guy is, right? I mean, obviously the quarterback and all that he's been able to accomplish and done for this school and his team and the success and what's ahead of him. But more than that, to be humble, to give credit to others, to represent what high school football is all about. So, I think that he's more than deserving for this and certainly got a really bright future.
And Jackson is headed to play up the road at Oklahoma for the Sooners. And Jackson, not that you needed an extra level of boost of confidence considering what you were able to do at the Elite 11 finals last summer, throughout your senior season, most recently at the Under Armour All-America game down in Florida. But what type of confidence does this give you heading into your career at Oklahoma?
It definitely gives me a lot of confidence heading into college. But at the same time, I've got to keep a level head because, everyone around me is just as good and just got to humble myself and make sure I keep on grinding.
Is there something specific about that Oklahoma Sooners offense that appealed to you and what Coach Levy likes to do there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the reason it sticks out to me so much is because it kind of resembles what I run at the high school level. It's the same concept you run at Denton Guyer. So to me, I think I knew going into a place like Oklahoma and Coach Levy's system that I was going to be very familiar with it, and I was going to transition very well into that offense.
Yeah, you're one of the headliners in that Oklahoma recruiting class, which ranked number 5 nationally in the early signing period last month. What's been your biggest message for some of those recruits, especially considering the bumpy season that the Sooners had under Coach Brent Venables to kick off that era?
Yeah, you just got to trust the process. The coaching staff that we have is absolutely outstanding. They've assembled almost a super team in a way. Coach Venables' defense, Coach Levy's offense. You got Coach Murray coaching the running backs. You've got all these coaches, and it takes longer than a year to rebuild. You can't come in overnight and instill a culture and instill your ideals into a program of what you want. So just my message to those recruits was just staying true and, kind of asking them, why did you commit in the first place? Did you trust these coaches or did you commit because it's Oklahoma, and having a bumpy season obviously hurt recruiting a little bit, but I think these next couple of years will be really special for us.
Yeah, it didn't hurt it too much. It's still number 5 nationally in the team rankings. Jackson just went through the recruiting process. As I'm sure you're aware, the recruiting process in the world of recruiting is different times than what you experience. What would your message be to the recruits that are navigating those waters right now in the world of recruiting?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of talk for these guys. And, even though they're beyond mature and handling that, there's a lot of people in their ear. And I think more than anything else, I would just say, trust your gut, trust your heart, and the relationships that you've built. And, you can control what you can control, and ultimately don't worry about all the other decisions and what people are talking about. Just, you got to feel comfortable with that. When your head hits the pillow at night, the decision you made, to trust that, and it'll work itself out if you're willing to have that type of work ethic and embrace the grind and trust the coaching staff. The results will come, and there'll be adversity at some point in time in these young men's lives. And so knowing that you can trust those people and feel confident in that, that's all you can do.
Yeah, and Jason, you were able to surprise Jackson with his award. What was that like for both of you? And we'll start with you, Jason.
It's awesome. The Gatorade National Football Player of the Year, as you mentioned, those names on there, what an honor. Just such an elite group, and for him to receive that. But not just that, to see his humility and his family and his friends all here to celebrate him on this day. You can tell he's well liked, and they're going to miss him here. But, these are the moments you play for, and to be able to be honored like this, you don't think about that in July, and you're out there training with your teammates, or in the middle of September and you're having a hard day. You're not thinking about these moments. And these are just a kind of a byproduct of that. And to see his family and this community rally behind him, as a guy that was able to play a long time in the NFL, that's what it's all about, because those guys are the next generation. See that he's doing it the right way. I'm certainly really proud of that.
Yeah, and Jackson, for you, what was it like to have a player of the legendary status that Jason Witten has, to be able for him to come and surprise you with that award?
It was awesome. It means a lot, having a player like Jason Witten coming in and surprising me. Obviously, a NFL legend. I mean, it was really cool. And not only that, the whole Gatorade surprise was insane too. We had signing day in the gym this morning, and I was expecting to just do signing day and go home today. And my head coach, Coach Heim, told me I needed to move some boxes in the weight room. Wasn't thinking anything of it, and sure enough, got surprised with Gatorade National Player of the Year. So it was a really good surprise.
Yeah, Jackson, you're one of those players that's going to be able to experience the move to the SEC. As a player, what is your mindset for the Sooners and for Oklahoma as you guys encounter that change on the horizon?
I kind of take that mentality where it's iron sharpens iron. To get to the level where I guess you could say Georgia's at right now, 2 national championships back-to-back, 15-0 season. I think the only way to get to that level is you have to play people at that level and go into the SEC.
Reminder, 2 major commitments happening right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. 4-star tight end Christian Betancourt will announce his college decision at 1:30 Eastern, and 4-star safety Jalen Hayward will follow with his pick at 2:30. Now here to give us the latest intel on both these recruits is our own Steve Wiltfong. Steve, appreciate the green. Love that we're matching outfits. Let's start with Betancourt, the number 4 tight end in the class. Looks like he's deciding between Clemson, Oregon, and Ohio State. Now less than 24 hours before he makes his commitment. What can you tell us about his recruitment?
Well, he's one of the most coveted tight ends in the country right now. A guy that, as you said, the guys that they have visiting this weekend, guys like Ryan Wingo, Mike Matthews, and Williams Nwaneri can help them get there. Mike Matthews visited for Tennessee's victory over Alabama, saw the goalposts come down and go out into the river or wherever they put it. Love that atmosphere, wants to learn more about the program. Ryan Wingo, my crystal ball is on Tennessee for him. Williams Nwaneri told me at the end of the fall, Tennessee's one of the programs recruiting them the hardest. They got several other guys coming in that I think they lead for. Boo Carter, Marcus Worry, and Nate Spillman. Several others there in the lead group for. So Tennessee, they've arrived. They're not selling a vision anymore, guys. It's going to be interesting to see what this class does, because they have the number 9 recruiting class coming in, and they look like they're going to be in strong position for another top 10 class here in the 2024 cycle.
Steve, let's hear a little bit more about Ryan Wingo, the number 3 wide receiver in the top 24/7. Will be in Knoxville this weekend, as you mentioned. The Vols battling Mizzou, Texas A&M, Penn State, LSU, among others for his commitment, but you have Tennessee leading with the crystal ball. How strongly are you favoring Josh Heupel and co for Wingo, and where does his recruitment go from here?
Yeah, I'm not sure that someone had more fun this fall than Ryan Wingo. I feel like he was at every single big game of the college football season on tour there. But Tennessee, I think, is the program that has set the bar for him. I think it's because of his relationship with the staff. And I also think it's because of the explosive offense that Josh Heupel and those guys put on the field this past season, where he's watching receivers running wide open for big gains, the way they scheme it up, the way they play. And then certainly he loved the atmosphere. He was at the win over Florida. So Tennessee getting 2 monster home victories this year in front of big recruit sections. Ryan Wingo was part of it for the victory over Florida. And Tennessee, in my opinion, has set the tone in this recruitment. He's got Oregon and Colorado coming, Texas A&M, Oregon and Colorado visits coming. I'm losing track of my visits here, Blair and Grace. People are going to have to click their 24/7 Sports profiles and read those recent stories.
Yeah, what a time to be a recruit. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right, thanks for your time, Steve. And a new episode of Wiltfong Whip Around dropping tomorrow, so you can get the latest from Steve every Monday and Friday on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. James Franklin has a reputation for picking his targets early and then trying to land a commitment as soon as possible. Now, it doesn't always pay off, as you can see here. These are the notable players in his last 4 classes who committed 6+ months before signing day. Now, more than half of them ultimately signed with Penn State, and that's what makes Junior Day so important. Now to preview Junior Day in Happy Valley, let's welcome in Tyler Calvaruso, our staff writer for Lions247. Now, Tyler, before we get into the big names visiting Penn State, let's talk a little bit more about James Franklin's recruiting process. He's been consistent in landing those early commitments, but the risk that comes with that is those recruits may get wandering eyes later in the cycle. So what is his philosophy when it comes to accepting early commitments, knowing he may have to fight off other schools later on?
So I would say there are 2 parts of the equation. Penn State always feels that if it's in a position to accept a commitment from a recruit, the relationship is rock solid on multiple fronts. The relationship is solid with the player, the family, the high school coaching staff. So if the time comes where it does have to fight that battle late in the cycle, as we've seen, that they have a good enough relationship with the recruit to hang on in the end, because they could sell the long-standing relationship and just the comfort level that the staff has with the player and the coaching staff and the family. And there's also the fact that this staff does have a preference to zone in on its top guys early, set the foundation of its class, get its real building blocks in place. That way, for the second wave of the cycle later on in the fall, when guys are flipping and you have your late risers of the cycle, the staff could really look hard at its needs and address where they want to go and what direction they want to do and what players they want to try and flip. So the philosophy, I would say, is a double-edged sword, because, you take guys early, they start to look around at the end of the cycle. We see it every year. But Penn State is pretty confident in its approach in that regard.
Tyler, Penn State geographically, maybe not the easiest place to get to, yet James Franklin has recruited very well the last few cycles. What makes it a destination or an attractive place for recruits when you are able to discuss things with them in interviews and get recaps of their trips?
So some players tell me that they really appreciate that it is kind of in the middle of nowhere, because they get away from all the hoopla, focus on ball, focus on their development, and get to the next level. And there's also the fact that Penn State really sells that it has an atmosphere like no other. You got the whiteout, the 107,000 strong. A lot of guys want to see that in person, and pretty much every recruit that I've talked to post-visit, they rave about the atmosphere inside Beaver Stadium. It's one of those programs where you got to get there and see it to believe it. You see it on TV, you see the atmosphere inside Beaver Stadium on television, and it looks great, but then you get there and you experience it firsthand, a completely different story. And a lot of guys really just fall in love with that while they're on their visits. So it's one of those programs where you get there, you get the guys on campus, and you do your best job to sell. You sell the atmosphere, you sell everything that you have to offer on campus facility-wise, and you sell the fact that State College, while it's not the biggest town out there, it is indeed a college town, and it is a Big Ten town. It could be big time, even though it's not big geographically.
All right, well, talking about selling the guys while they're on campus, let's go over some of the recruits visiting Happy Valley this weekend. Top 24/7 linebacker Christopher Jones recently released his top 12. Where do the Knits stand with him, and where else will he be visiting?
So Penn State has a pretty unique connection with Jones, with Director of Player Personnel Kenny Sanders. That is his uncle. So Nittany Lions, that's a feather in their cap in this recruitment. And if you look at his group of finalists right now, it's still early for him, but it's basically a who's who. You got LSU, Notre Dame, Ohio State. And also, the local schools have a pretty strong case. The Virginia Techs of the world. So, Jones, it's big that he's getting to Penn State this weekend specifically, I would say. Penn State really want to get him on campus this weekend because they want it to be his first visit of the month. They know that he's going to be making other visits elsewhere this month, and they wanted to get that real first impression of the winter. So credit to the staff. They pushed really hard to get him on campus. Obviously, you know, with the family connection, it's a little bit easier to make that happen, but they're really excited to get him to Happy Valley. And I just talked about how hard they sell. They're going to be doing a lot of selling with Jones this weekend.
Another player that will be on campus, Tyler, is top 24/7 wide receiver Kalen Adams. It seems like he's still in the early stages of his recruitment. He has a top 12 that he recently released, but what's the status of Penn State among that dozen schools that are after his signature?
So from a Penn State perspective, Adams is definitely their most wanted at wide receiver at this point. They're in a good spot with a bunch of other receivers, but Adams is the guy they really love. They love his versatility, his explosiveness, his route running ability. And I would say that another situation where getting him on campus to start the month when he has visits to Miami and Virginia Tech lined up, those are the other two really and strongly in the mix with him right now. Another situation where Penn State's really glad to be getting that first crack at him this month. While he's not in a rush to, go through his process, he's going to make a bunch of visits. He's going to evaluate all of his options. Another spot where Penn State, they want to hit a home run with that first impression. And this weekend, they view that as a prime opportunity to really entrench themselves as the top contender in his recruitment.
All right, great stuff, Tyler. Thanks for joining us today. And for more updates on the Nittany Lions throughout the offseason, stay tuned to Lions247.com. All right, Blair, let's get to some viewer questions. And thank you to everyone for sending them in. We are going to start off with a question from Alvin Ferguson. Blair, he asks, and this is perfect because you are about to fly out to the Poly Bowl. Which player are you most looking forward to seeing at the Polynesian Bowl?
It would have to be Nico Iamaleava, and this is a player who is certainly highly touted, highly regarded, already at Tennessee, the five-star quarterback. Didn't get a chance to do any of the All-Star games in 2022, but he kicks off 2023 with his stay out in Hawaii. This coming weekend, we're going to see him in practices all week. And after what we saw from some quarterbacks like Jackson Arnold, who we heard from earlier in the show down in Orlando, Jaden Rashada was at the Under Armour game as well. We saw Dante Moore, the UCLA five-star quarterback, put on an MVP performance in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl. It is Nico Iamaleava's turn to open some eyes and to really wow the crowd. So I'm excited to see what the Tennessee Vol has in store for us.
Hey, Hawaii, not a bad location for a work trip, huh? All right, our next question coming from friend of the show, Tyler Chambers. What's the latest on the two unsigned tight ends, Deuce Robinson and Walker Lyons?
Let's start with Walker Lyons. He recently released a top 4, Georgia, Utah, USC, and he's got some schools that he's really considering. He used to be committed to Stanford, did basically say he's going to go on his mission. That's still the plan. But for him moving forward, he's in no real rush, but he can make a decision at any point. And then with Deuce Robinson, you have to look at Georgia and USC still being the schools that he's considering the most. He will be in Los Angeles this weekend, Grace. And one would assume that he would go to USC and check out the Trojans, but a source close to that recruitment told me that Deuce Robinson will only be in LA for less than 24 hours, will not be able to make it to USC, but he will be out at Dodger Stadium, in fact, to work out for the Dodgers as they evaluate him for the upcoming MLB draft next summer. So it's one of those solo workouts. They get to work him out in person and really figure out where his skill set is on the baseball diamond. But Deuce Robinson is doing it all right now. He's playing basketball for his high school team in Pinnacle down in Phoenix, Arizona. He's going to be at the Polynesian Bowl next week in Hawaii as well. He's, mixing in some baseball stuff as well. And by the way, he has to figure out where he's going to go to college and where he's going to sign. So I think right now you have to like where Georgia and where USC sit with Deuce Robinson.
Wow, busy but exciting schedule for the talented tight end. All right, our next question from Gatito. Where is Roderick Pleasant leaning with his decision coming soon?
Yeah, he recently released a top 5 as well. And I like USC and I like Oregon. I think that's a battle between those Pac-12 rivals for the speedy corner. I know we mentioned him on the show earlier this week. And, I think common sense would tell you he might be staying closer to home. But This is a player who has real significant track interests, and Tracktown USA is Eugene, Oregon. I think he really likes what the Ducks are able to sell for him from a multi-sport aspect. And they also need help on in the secondary. So this could be a player that could help the Ducks immediately in that defense under Dan Lanning. It's really close to call right now, Grace. He also will be at the Polynesian Bowl, so we've got a lot of information. I don't know if you're mentioning it's going to be hard, right, to get a lot of info, and it could be a vacation, but no, this is going to be solely a work trip.
Okay, well, just take a little bit of time to go to the beach and get a tan, okay? I know you'll be working hard. I don't doubt that at all. But maybe just like 1 hour of rest. Squeeze it in there. Okay, our final question from Boulder Soldier, theme of the show. If it doesn't work out at Florida, do you think Jaden Rashada is likely to stay closer to home?
That would be my hunch, my speculation. I would assume that he would maybe look at some options closer to home, considering that some doors have already been shut on the East Coast. He wouldn't be able to go back to Florida if that was the case. You know, Miami was a school he was previously committed to. You know, he does have some relationships with some coaches out west. Oregon was one of them that was really recruiting him really hard. He's a Bay Area kid, so you have to look at Cal and whether or not that could work out for them. And then you have to look at ASU. Kenny Dillingham, the offensive coordinator who was previously at Oregon, now taking the helm at ASU. They had a really good relationship earlier in the process. So if Jaden Rashada is thinking about maybe staying closer to the West Coast, those would be a couple schools I would look at.
Okay, we know Deion Sanders has no problem poaching recruits from other schools. Is there any chance that Jaden Rashada ends up at Colorado?
Never say never. I mean, they definitely had a quarterback already signed with them. They had a transfer quarterback. They stuck. Ryan Staub was committed, a 3-star from Southern California. They honored his commitment as well when Deion Sanders arrived. So, you know, that would be a mix of both worlds, right? That'd be everything colliding at once. Jaden Rashada, Deion Sanders, you know, kind of the late flip, the late decisions, all the things that make recruiting so fun and dramatic. I don't know if there will be enough headlines in the world to be able to capture that moment if it were to happen.
Hope recruiting is a small, small world, and the drama never ends. By the way, if you want more drama, if you want more recruiting insight, make sure you tune into the new 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast hosted by Andrew Ivins and Cooper Patagna, two of the best in the biz. Starting January 17th, Andrew and Cooper will be bringing you the best recruiting talk every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. All right, as for us, this show will be back on Tuesday. Thank you for joining us today. For Blair Angulo, I'm Grace Remington. Have a good night.
See you guys.